Hamadakiapi Chantewashte Nape Chius Papilo Kola Yuhai Chichab. This is Chase Iron Eyes, and I'm speaking from within the what's now known as the Oglala Lakota Nation, or the Pine Ridge Reservation, or even POW camp. All of these reservations, especially ours, the Ocheti Shakoni, or the Sioux Nation, as we entered into treaties with the United States, are known as, are all former, some would say currently, being used as POW camps because of the nature of the laws and the institutions that are in place that continuously and have since, the famous Indian wars. In our circles, we know that the Indian wars have never ended. Truly, our sovereignty is always under threat, whether it's at the Dakota Access Pipeline, or with our other brothers and sisters at Pihimaha, or at Oak Flat. Wherever there are land defenders, wherever there is indigenous sovereign land defense, or indigenous nations, indigenous peoples exercising their inherent authorities, asserting their international identities and characters within our original homeland, sometimes in our language or according to our worldview. Whenever we do that, we are running afoul of a system, the reservation state of mind that those colonizers, those colonial oppressive forces and institutions have sought to entrap us in. A reservation sounds a lot like a game preserve, because in the beginning, these were places of confinement. Now we control the tribal governments, but it's not necessarily those who are pro Lakota sovereignty, or those who are pro traditional and original worldviews of our people, of the Ocheti Shakoi, or just indigenous nations, period. I give this long background because in what is known as the modern times, or the modern area, or a modern era, the era of the federal Indian, the era of Americans, the era of Canadians, the era of the G20, or the corporate fascist extractive war machine, that the economic reality and political reality that is being imposed on us, on indigenous peoples, but on Americans, on Canadians, New Zealanders, Australians, the English thinking universe. We all can relate to each other on certain levels now because we have the same masters. Like, a lot of people think that whether it's Dapple or the Black Hills, like those are Indian struggles. Those are purely Native American dilemmas. Oh, I feel so bad for what we've done to you. I feel so bad that you're still treated this way. Well, you have to drink the same water that we do. And if you're here long enough, you might have sacred sites to defend, just as we are trying to defend our sacred sites. Think back to the Black Hills. Leave Dapple aside for a second, because that fight is still going on. We're in that fight because Donald Trump, the career criminal and grifter that he is, illegally and improperly forced the Secretary of the Army to grant that easement. He granted that easement. He forced the Secretary of the Army to do that. And by our legal initiative and our lawsuits, we got a federal judge to agree with us that what he did was wrong, and that energy transfer partners, no matter who it is, should follow the law. There should be a full environmental impact statement. That's all that was argued there. That's all we've ever wanted, was for European Americans to honor their word, which they've never done. At least the United States government and these states of the Union, especially the ones that are currently illegally occupying my country, the Republic of Lakota, the Ocheti Shakoni, the Sioux Nation. We're talking about South Dakota. We're talking about Governor Kristi Noem. There's a reason why they don't, they try to make it a race conflict or a cultural war. And it definitely is that. And there's a very violent settler colonial mythology that has informed the identities of your average Joe, your average South Dakotan, your average North Dakotan or Nebraskan or Montanan, Wyomingite. Think of places down in the Southwest where the Dene Nation lives. Think of border towns. Why are those places ground zero for colonial and the indigenous oppressed conflict? Why is it that we're only 10% of the population in Rapid City, but yet we're more than 54% of the imprisoned population, those who are in Pennington County? Why is it that we're 10 to 12% of all children population in South Dakota, but yet we're more than half of every child who is in the South Dakota Department of Social Services custody? It's systemic. It's an institutional attack. We are being targeted out here. So when somebody like Kristi Noem invites then President number 45, Donald J. Trump, to our sacred lands and says, in the middle of COVID, of a pandemic, let's have a party. Let's light off fireworks in a place that has been subjected to drought, perhaps from the impending climate crisis. She invites Trump out here and then sends him a little mini Mount Rushmore with Trump's orange face on that little figurine or what, that little statue or whatever she sent him. Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, who some people call the Sarah Palin of the Plains, but I think she's a little smarter than that. I think that Kristi Noem is smart enough to be dangerous. Her and Donald Trump are of like mind. They are like kin. They know that they have, and you can tell this in the speeches that Trump is now giving, like the one that he gave in Rapid City. You can tell they know, Kristi Noem and Donald Trump know that they have a very fragile base. They have a base that is not only racist, but largely uninformed and perhaps lacks, certain, I don't want to say abstract thought, but they're definitely uninformed. Are they undereducated? I don't know the numbers. I don't know the stats of places like South Dakota, but probably, because people who are racist or who are not able to recognize that they are being programmed, here by violent settler colonial mythology, are a questionable demographic. But you can tell. But Trump doesn't have a choice. I watched a little bit of his talk, and to be honest, I didn't watch the whole thing, but he's a little less animated. He's a little more drab. His delivery and his energy is not what it was when he was running against Hillary Clinton in 2016. It's not there. But when you're a career criminal and you're a career grifter, look at this guy's history. Back to his grandfather. These guys are cut from a degenerate cloth, and they will do anything to exploit their ill-informed base. Are they ignorant? Are they hillbilly? Or are they a demographic that represents a significant portion of the American population, which has been bred, has been programmed to think of itself as a superior demographic, one for whom the institutions and the seats of power and privilege were designed. So you could just be this random mediocre white European American dude, a male, and you could succeed in this country. And we're talking about when he talks about make America great again, he's talking about when black people were second-class citizens. He's talking about the time before American Indians were citizens at all, or before we could even express our religious worldview in public without being criminalized. Like, that's what, when Trump talks about making America great again, those are dog whistles to the racist and not only violent but radical fringe. These guys are they're clever, but make no mistake about it that they are trying to instigate a bloody conflict. Just look at January 6th, 2021. Our news cycle moves so fast and our attention spans are so short that most people don't give a shit about what happened, that there was blood spilled in America's capital. Most people they don't even cross their mind anymore. There's still Trump 2024. So make no mistake that Trump represents a very direct, clear, and present threat to the fabric of our democracy. Were those my founding fathers in the 1700s? Hell no. They were slave owning, genocidal pedophiles sometimes and rapists sometimes. Those are not my founding fathers. But the philosophical tradition that they tried to express and lay the foundation so that there could be an evolutionary democratic republic, I respect that. You know, even if they stole that from the Iroquois nation, I respect that. And it allows me, someone upon whom American citizenship was imposed. I didn't ask to be an American citizen. This country forced that on me in 1924. But we, the collective demographic that call ourselves American, or who are forced to identify, forced to get an American passport, for instance, we have to realize that we are all in this together. If this radical right fringe can spill blood in the Capitol and act as terrorists do, remember, they labeled me and my family and my nation religiously driven indigenous jihadists, eco jihadists. And here they are, the Ku Klux Klan, you know, without hoods, just with suits on, instigating political insurrectionist violence in the capital of the United States, trying to instigate a race war, trying to instigate a conflict, and they're unable to. Thank God. They lack what it takes to do something like that, and that's a whole nother discussion. But they use a lot of fear tactics. They want us to think that they're capable of doing that, and they are. They are doing that. You know, the FBI, the DOJ, all of the alphabet boys that were used to target and politically imprison Leonard Peltier should be focusing on everyone who was at that Trump Noem rally. That's not an understatement. That's not hyperbole. These people are ignorant and they are dangerous, and they think that they are expressing what they view to be the substance of American patriotism, but they are acting and conducting themselves like terrorists. If it looks, walks, and talks like a terrorist, it is a terrorist. He Donald Trump shouldn't even be allowed to run right now because of this. It should be unconstitutional for him to run. There are some attorneys general who are out there fighting that fight and making sure that the American public is educated about that fact, that if somebody tries to overthrow the United States government, they shouldn't be allowed to run for public office here. So it's possible that Trump might not be on the ballot, but that doesn't mean that he's going to quit calling for violence. So we need to be ready to meet that threat. Again, we're standing in the power of our peace, ready to meet threats by those who seek to confine us to substandard treatment, who don't want us to see our promised land, whether that's as working class, whether that's as working class Americans or whether that's as indigenous nations who just want some of our land back because we want to protect it from maniacs like Donald Trump, because they don't care. I don't know. I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the way that Trump conducts himself, the way that Noem conducts herself, um, it is a dream. It is tailor made. It is corporate fascism served on a silver platter. To the corporate fascist. And if you listen to Trump's speech, he this guy even walks, talks, and acts like he thinks he's Mussolini. His followers and his base exalt and put accolades on people like um, Adolf Hitler. This is not hyperbole. It is not far fetched for us to call unto ourselves to go within and find strength to stand for what's right. They like to use the phrase that bad things happen when good men and women, but probably just men for them, when good men fail to act. Everything that they say, it's almost like they're projecting their fears and their insecurities on their base, because their base wants to go back to a time when they owned slaves. They want to go back to a time when they could genocide native people, indigenous peoples, steal all of our land, and make this the greatest country in the world, the richest country in the world. That's what they say. And certainly the top 1% is rich, but the rest of the working class is certainly not rich. And we have to stop believing that any kind of wealth is going to trickle down from the corporations or from the fascists who are extracting that wealth from us. So, in conclusion, we've got to stay ready. Wana wakta upo. We got to stay ready. We can't let our fear lead to inaction. That's not only with the threat of violent settler colonialism, but of the climate crisis. I get a sense that the the corporate extractive fascistic powers that be want us to feel helpless. They want us to feel hopeless. We can't do that. We have to fight. If there's a climate crisis, then let's get ready for it. Let's neutralize this ruling class, this corporate extractive billionaire class that forces us to serve its systems. Trump came to Rapid City and it didn't go off as big as he thought it would. But partly that's because we have a presence there. We, meaning indigenous people, indigenous nations, Oceti Shakowi, the Sioux Nation, Uniting Resilience was on site, as well as 2KC Media and others from not only Cheyenne River and the Pine Ridge Reservation, but Rosebud, Standing Rock, Lower Brule, Crow Creek, wherever our people came from, they made it known in Rapid City that hate was not welcome in our state. And I just want to thank Uniting Resilience and 2KC Media. I know that Oscar High Elk may have been arrested. I know that I caught some of 2KC Media's live feed where there was a woman being arrested, and I believe Oscar was attempting to de-arrest her and, call into question whether or not the police had legitimate reasons to be executing an arrest, and I do believe that he was arrested there. So they may need support. We always want to think of them and thank them for what they're doing, because it matters. Trump should know. The last time he came here, we gathered by a few hundred people in the Black Hills in Keystone, and he came here again. And like I said, he just doesn't have the same. He doesn't have it like he thinks he has it. But they will continue to operate in their delusion so long as this base is funding it. So long as you keep giving Trump money, he's going to keep doing what he does. So, you know, we just might have to deal with this guy for the foreseeable future, certainly in 2024. Pay attention, stay up, stay informed as you can, and always take action wherever you're at in the struggle. We thank you. Lila Wopila Tanka Ichichapalo.